Hey YouTube, I didn't make a video yesterday because I mainly didn't really do all that much, but I'm trying to get cleaned up here. So I got some wood stacked up as neatly as I could. I want to start planing wood in the greenhouse, but it keeps raining. I got my workbench outside cleaned off, and I got a pile of junk I got to take to the dump. And did you ever notice, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but for some reason, no matter, Sally and I have had a couple of new houses that we lived in, and I can never understand why, like, all of the leaves will land by my drain or right in front of the door. And I mean all of them. I had a freaking loader bucket full of leaves, 2 loader buckets of leaves that I raked out of here, because they keep falling in front of the front door, or the door that we use. I never can understand this. Why do leaves always end up right in front of your door? So anyway, that's what I was doing yesterday. Right now I'm about to feed the dog, or not feed him, but walk him. Sally's going to feed him. And then I'm going to start cutting some of this that's firewood into firewood, and cut the logs that need to be cut on the sawmill into the lengths that I want. So that's what I'll be doing today as soon as I get going. Hey YouTube, I'm going to talk about another subject here that's relating to logs and things. If you look at this log that's right in front of us here, you can see up at the one end there, it's bent. So this is the butt end here, it's smaller, that's the top of the tree end. If you look at this log, you can tell where it's bent there. This side, the side of the log where the bend is, like the concave side, okay? The concave side is what's called in compression. In other words, the weight of the tree is pulling in that direction, and therefore it compresses the wood that the weight of the tree is leaning on, and stretches the opposite side, which is this side over in here. It stretches this, so it pulls. It's not in compression on one side, it's actually stretching the wood of the log. So I'm going to be cutting some of these logs and stuff here into firewood, and I'm going to especially cut the top end of this off for firewood. But at the same time, I'd like to take a look at it, cut it open, take a look at it, and see just what's happening when we talk about things like that. Okay guys, so where the end of the tape is there, that's 8'3", and I like 8-footers. If you watch my videos, you know that. So I'm going to be cutting that off there. But then I'm going to take that bent piece over to the sawmill. Looks like it'll be 4 or 5 feet long. And we're going to cut it up in slices, like slab it, just to see what the wood looks like, you know, when it is under compression. See what kind of, you know, difference we would have with that compared to other wood. So give me a little bit of time here. Got the chainsaw. I'm going to start that up, warm it up a little bit, and then I'll cut that thing and we'll take it over to the mill. Okay guys, so a couple minutes later, and I have this cut off. Let me just measure that log. I want to see how big, oh, excuse me, that piece is. Yeah, 5 foot. Okay, so you can see that this is red oak. What I want to show you here though is this. If you look really close, you can see that this tree has a little bit of shake to it. Okay, it's not as bad as what some pines get that have a big canopy on them and they take a lot of wind, but it has a little shake. So between the shake that's at the end of that and the bend that's in this log here, we should have an interesting cut. I can't say what it's going to be for sure. I don't know. You never know. So I'm going to take it and put it on the sawmill, and I'm going to cut it into slabs, because actually this is firewood to me, but it's interesting to see what it's going to look like inside. So that's what we're going to do. If I was 20 years old, I'd pick that up and throw it on, but I ain't. Guys, I don't know if you can see this. Let me see if I can zoom in on this quick. If you notice, you can see there that the thumb is no longer working. Apparently this thing is made out of Chinese steel, because I gotta tell you, I have never seen an implement tear out the holes where the pins go. I usually see pins breaking, but all I did was grab a hold of, I think it was in fact, if you look at the videos from a couple days ago, or maybe a week ago, I picked up like a 6-inch log, 12 foot long. When I set it down, the piece fell out of it, and that's what happened. So I'm going to have to redo that the American way and put a piece of pipe inside there, of some heavy pipe, re-weld it, and hopefully I can get that thing to work. But obviously Chinese steel does not hold up. So anyway, let's take a look at this log. Okay, so we've got a red oak log here. It's about 5 foot long, and all I want to do is look at it for the sake of the of warping. I want to see what's going to happen when there's stress from compression and pulling on the opposite side of a log. I want to see what takes place with it. Because in reality, this is firewood. Alright, so let's turn this. Now that looks like the high spot. So that's the concave part of the log. So I have that to the side there. Let me just put you inside here so you can see a little bit closer. Okay, so you can see that the log is bent like this. Okay? Now, like I said, this is a piece of firewood. I'm only doing this for the sake of the video. None of this is going to help me, because even the firewood's going to be different than what I would normally want it. But anyway, here goes. So let's see. If I cut this right through the middle, or if I slab it, you know, like say 1-inch board starting at the top, and I cut this the way it's laying right now, there's some chance that those boards, they're gonna have a bend in them, because the log has a bend in it. But I don't think that that's gonna show you what really happens with that compression. Okay? So I think what we ought to do is turn the log with the bend up and cut that into pieces, and then we'll be able to see what actually happens to a log when it is under compression. Now I need to move this down a little bit. I'm going to use my toe board, but it's not going to really help. Let me put this dog up. I don't want the log to fall off, but I do want to move the log down a little bit. I want to move it down onto this other bunk rail here. And this end is kind of heavy here. I just need it down a little further so that it hangs on to this roller here a little better. So let me just move it down a little more. There, that's good. Okay, so what we want to do here, like I say, is we want to have the bend either up or down. to start cutting this, because I want to see what happens with wood that's under compression. Okay, so because of the way that this thing is, let me see what I got here. I got 12 inches at that end. I got 13 inches at this end, but the way the bend is, it's going to make it hard to cut that. So I need to pick this end down here up a little bit. So because I can't get it on the toe board because it's a little too short to hit both dogs as well as the toe board, I'm just going to go ahead and put a 2x4 in there like I used to. Okay, so right now the pith's not perfect. It's close to 6.5 inches. I'm not worried about the pith. What I'm worried about here is to cut perpendicular to the bend. That's what I want to do. Okay, from what I can see from back here, it needs to be turned a little bit yet. Actually, this way. Needs to be turned a little bit more clockwise. You want to get the highest part of the bend up. Right here. Okay, that should be about it. Okay, now I'm going to shut the camera off for a little bit because I need to start the wood miser up and let it warm up a little. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to start to cut this and see what happens. Okay, so the purpose of this video is to show what happens when you have something that's under compression. Now the compression part of this log is on the bottom, okay? But I want to take a cut out of the top so I can see the difference between the wood, if there is any difference. noticing right off the bat here is that slab is laying pretty flat. So in other words, it didn't warp right at the first cut. You see the width of the cut there? The curve? It's not rocking or anything. Sometimes, you know, when you cut a log that has stress in it, you'll see it bend away from the cut, or away from the cant part of the log. So I'm going to take that off of there and just move it down on the bunk further. So we've got a really nice cut here, nice and flat. The variance between, you know, like where it's perfectly flat, it's down a little here, is minuscule, less than a 1/16 of an inch, which the Wood-Mizer is good for a 16. So that would be the opposite side of the compression part of the log. So now we're going to turn that 180 degrees and we're going to see what it looks like where the compression side is. So now this part of the log is like this, okay? The concave side of the bend. Okay, so we've basically got a good cut there. It doesn't seem to be affecting the wood too much as far as warping at the moment. Like I say, this is firewood to me, but it's got some nice looking features to it. Again, this is a nice flat cut here. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut a 1-inch board off of this face, and then a 1-inch board I'm going to flip at 180 and cut a 1-inch board off of that. And we're going to keep an eye on how those boards act. Okay, that's my plan. But before I do that, I want to see if taking off the bark helps to relieve some of whatever stress is in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this thing on a 90. I want to get down to a cant, but I want to keep track of what is what here, so we can see if anything happens to the wood as we cut it. I'm going to get a marker so that I can mark what I have here. I'll be right back. Okay, so I got a marker here, and this was the second cut I made. This was the dip, so this was the convex side, or no, this was the concave side. Okay, this was the convex side. Alright, so in other words, that was the outside of the circle, this was the inside of the circle. Okay, so we just want to remember that. Alright, so I want to cut the bark off of this thing, like I say, in some of that sapwood, just to see if I get any kind of a bending. I'm trying to find the warping right off the log. It's pretty amazing. It's laying pretty flat, although the opposite end seems like it's picking up a little bit. You can see the saw kerf there's a little wider. That could be from the blade. Or it could be because this is, you know, bending up a little. But either way, we're going to continue on with this. I want to get to the cant so I can see what the boards are going to do. So I'm going to take that off of there, and then I'm going to turn that. Don't forget, this is all firewood to me. I'm going to mark the sides of this so I don't lose. This is the concave side. This is the convex side. Oh, well, okay, of the bend. Now I know that because the one board has a rot spot in it, and that's on this side. Okay, so let's see what happens here now. Got some interesting looking grain, if nothing else. So I think I'll cut a 7-inch cut off the bunk out of that, and that'll give me, I'll still have some firewood on that bark that I can cut into and split, and then we'll have a nice cant to cut some boards out of. Still ending up with some nice straight cuts, but the boards are the things that are gonna give me the best warping. And of course, normally I'm not looking for warping. I pray not to have warping, but the boards being square will warp better with two flat faces on them than they will when the board has a round face on it. Okay? Interesting. You know, I hate cutting red oak up into firewood, even when it's like this, but it's going to be firewood. I'll end up with too many pieces, too many little pieces. But an 8x8 or a 7x7, what is this? A 7x7 makes a nice railroad tie, sort of. You could use that for landscaping, although red oak isn't a good choice for that. Alright, so well, I guess I don't have to move this right away. I think what I'm going to do is cut a nice 1-inch board out of this, and we'll see how that board holds up, you know, today. The thing with today is it's overcast. It was raining this morning. It's supposed to rain again. I got a little bit of sun up there, but it's very overcast, so you're not seeing any sun on the ground here. But let me cut a couple boards. I'll cut two 1-inch boards out of that. Or maybe I'll cut one 1-inch board out of that and keep turning it, cutting 1-inch boards out of whatever's there. So I'll mark this thing this would be on the, let's see, if that's concave, that would be the bottom. So let's call this C, and I'll call it side, CS, and I'll call this, let's see, the concave side, and I'll just put clockwise here, okay? So in other words, I'm counterclockwise, so I'll put CC again. So concave, the side cut, and I'm turning it counterclockwise to find that, alright? So that'll tell me what I have here. You can mark it any way you want. This is the first time I'm actually doing this as a demonstration, so I'm just writing whatever. Still a nice straight cut. I'm going to take one out of the opposite side. Still flat. want to lose my location here. So this is still the concave side. Now the problem with this board here is that there's a pretty big piece of rot there in it. This is the convex side, the back where the curve was the highest, so it's it may act up, although having the same amount of wood on each side might stabilize that thing. It's going to be hard to say, but we'll cut it, see what happens. Amazing to me that there's absolutely, so far, no warping occurring from the compression or the tension on the log. So we're just going to keep cutting, see how this works out here. Show you what they look like from the edge. They actually look pretty darn nice. Alright, I'm going to move those out of the way, and then I'll cut that. I think I'll cut that 2 more pieces out of that, and then I'm going to leave it go for firewood. Okay, we're still getting some nice straight boards here. This is a side cut. I cut one off the bottom, flipped it, and now this is still another side cut. In other words, the convex and the concave side of the log is still to the sides. Okay? cut that any smaller because it'll be too small for firewood, really. But what I am going to do is I'm going to cut a thin piece out of this concave part and see if that bows a little quicker than what the 3/4 inch boards are going. Now, let me just say that no matter what happens here with the cutting, you know, off the mill, rough cut, we can see that these boards are staying pretty straight, okay? They're pretty straight. But that doesn't mean that they're going to stay straight when moisture comes out of them. Now, but the point is it's a lot better looking than if they would have warped. Now, here's what we're looking at. Are we saying then that if you cut with the bend up or down, you'll end up with boards that are not bent so much? I don't know, but it's a thought. I know sometimes when I cut, depending upon what happens to the first board, I will change direction of the cut. So it all depends on if the board works or not. I'm sort of amazed that this hasn't done anything yet at this point. But a smaller piece may take less time to bend, but we'll see. I'll cut about a 1/4 inch piece out of that. Check it out, this is amazing how straight that board is. Not finding any stress in there at all at this point. Okay, so what's the conclusion? The conclusion is this. We cut the direct concave and convex bark off of the log on both, you know, one side then 180 degrees. And then we cut the opposite sides. That would be the 90-degree sides or the adjacent sides to the concave and convex. We cut the flitches off of that. And then we cut the cant then into a series of boards from each side. Okay? So let me just look at this here. That's on the concave side. This is from the sides. This is from the sides, and these two here are from the concave and convex side. I have them marked. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to separate them about the same distance so they get the same amount of air, and see what happens here over the next couple of hours with them drying. Now I'm not going to make you watch them dry, because what's the old saying? watching somebody slow work is like watching paint dry. Not a lot happening, so there's not going to be a lot happening here, but it's pretty amazing that a log bent like you saw that bend, and it was bent at least 4 inches. I used a 2x4, the 2-inch part, to flatten the log out enough to be able to cut it, and you can see that, you know, there's more on one end than there was on the other. So I would say that it was, probably bent 4 to 6 inches in 5 feet. Okay, 4 to 6 inches. So to get straight boards out of a bent log, yeah, straight boards out of a bent log. Now I know that I've seen some guys cut with the bend. They have a saw that's on some kind of a track. I've not seen it in person. I've seen it on YouTube that they can cut curves, which is pretty amazing also, and for different uses I would imagine. But we're going to keep an eye on this thing, and I'll get back to you in a couple hours after this is dried up. Meanwhile, I'm going to cut these other pieces up into firewood. Well guys, we're about 3 hours later. Not much happening there. There hasn't been any real sun to speak of, occasional glimpse, but we do have a good breeze, and usually if something's going to warp, especially if it's, you know, from stress, you're going to see it right away, and I'm not seeing it here. So I can take this to mean, and I'm taking it lightly now, don't be writing this in your rule book, that if you cut 90 degrees, I'm talking about with the Wood-Mizer now, 90 degrees to the bend, you can assume, and that's what we'll do so far, that you can get some straight boards out of the log you're working with. Now, naturally, there's a bunch of variables that could go in there with this, but for now, that's the assumption, and what we'll do is we'll take a look at this in the next couple days and see what happens. I managed to get rid of the 2x material from here. I stacked it over there so it can surface dry or air dry. I think you might be able to see it there. Yeah, so where is it? It's stacked over there somewhere. Right in there. Can't really see it from here. You take my word for it. I stacked the 2x over there. I want it to surface dry or air dry, and that's about it for today. Have a good one. This is the start of my pine pile. This is one of the reasons I hate having to cut 2x4s, then something else, then something else, because, you know, when you're starting out stacking it, it's hard to start off with a whole bunch of skids. So basically, I'm just going to put pine on here. When it comes time to cut plain 2x4 studs, 8-footers, I'm just going to put them on a certain pile by themselves. So this is a nice looking pine here. Man, oh man. Those are 10-footers. The 2x4s are 12-footers. There's a couple 2x8s in there on the bottom as well.